back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and I'm very excited today to be doing a very different type of top 10 list here on the channel, thanks to some awesome suggestions that I got from the Rolling Solo Facebook community. If you are not a part of that group, we really want you there because there's a lot of awesome conversations happening inside the solo community in that location, as well as in the Discord. So if you're not a fan of Facebook, you'd rather be on the Discord, or you'd rather be on Facebook than the Discord, or maybe you want to be in both places. Either way, we've got options, and there's conversations happening across a number of different categories inside of each of those places. Today, I threw a question to just the Facebook group, and inside the Facebook group, I asked them what type of top 10 lists would you guys like me to do? And one of them, among many awesome suggestions, which I've got all written down because they're fantastic, one of them was this one, the top 10 solo games I wish I could play more often. And why did I choose to do this one first? Because, well, it just kind of hit me different. It made me think about the fact of, well, what if I didn't have a channel? What if I stopped producing content? What if I just sat down and played solo games endlessly without any kind of need to switch from one game to the next, or to worry about the next game coming out to potentially cover on the channel? Or you remove all that out of the equation, and all of a sudden you've got a lot of time, especially for the time that I've segmented away from my life to basically do this, for the channel. If I was to get it all back, what other games would I pour myself into? What are the games that I have, what I want to dive further into? So this list of games are not going to be games that I haven't played before. So you're not going to find anything on here where I'm going to say, I've never opened the box, I don't know what this game is, I've never experienced it. These are all games I have experienced, I have played, but I'm not done with them. Like, in other words, if I had endless time, I would continue to fall down the rabbit hole and play them more and more and more. Because either I like the theme, I like the gameplay, I like the artwork, all that kind of stuff wrapped up. It's just a world I want to explore, essentially. So we're going to go through 10 games here in order from, and again, this list could potentially change month by month, week by week. But as of right now, these are my 10 games that if I had more time, I would play these more often. So we're going to start in the 10th position, and that is going to be Folklore of the Affliction from Greenbrier Games. This one came out in 2017. It is a world of gothic horror, so if you're ready to experience that and get lost in that co-op adventure, this is a game for you, for sure. Now, thematically, I think this should be way higher up. I mean, it's already quite high up the charts on Board Game Geek, but I think thematically this game is off the charts. Narratively, it will grab you and pull you into the story, and it will really make you care about what's going on and all the craziness that's coming at you. This is one that you can lose yourself in for sure, and I think if I had even more time to play this one, I would continue to go down the deep end with this one. As you can see in terms of the components, and this is showing you the overarching world map, which I believe this is a snippet of the world map, if I'm not mistaken. That might actually be the original core map. And then you've got these sheets essentially for each of the individual locations, which I thought was really cool. So instead of being kind of like thick cardboard, it was just individual sheets that were glossy. They were durable too. So they weren't going to rip per se unless you forcefully tried to destroy them. But I like that because it allowed for less weight in the box, for more variation in the landscapes, which is kind of what you want in one of these like epic campaign games where you're traversing a whole bunch of different, areas. You want kind of differences between the different areas and for it to kind of be memorable as you go through the experience. But long story short, with this one, very thematic, very cool. You can get absolutely lost in this, and if I had more time, the channel was not going and I didn't know what else to play, this would be one of the games I'd be reaching for. In terms of solo play, you're going to be very happy here. This one definitely has solo play lockdown. You're able to do that. The one thing I will mention is that some people may not be as enthused about the combat system from the core game experience. So the thing to mention too is that like this one has a lot of expansions. So the combat, in my opinion, got better, and the game in general got better and aged better as time went on. So I mean, it started out pretty good. 7.7 is pretty solid, but as you can see, as things came out for it, more expansions came out, the most recent one being Folklore of the Affliction. It got an 8.3, so it started cresting from kind of like that good territory to the great territory. And I think that's where, it gets real exciting is where they poured a lot of love into this one and really continue to support it beyond its original release. And so the world essentially has grown to a point where you could take everything that's released to date, which I have everything, and literally just dive in and get lost in it. And so for that reason, this one is definitely on my list. Number 9 on my list of solo games I wish I could play more often, Shadows of Brimstone, 100%. This one has been out since 2014. You'll see here the revised edition was in 2020. This is just one of many core boxes for this game. This one thematically is off the charts, 72. It came out in 2014. It has had a revision. That revision has really spruced up the look of the miniatures. It's also reduced the number of pieces on the sprues to put miniatures together, making the whole process much easier, especially for people that don't like assembling miniatures like myself. Originally, I was not a big fan, but I was able to do it. What they've done is really streamline that process and also upticked the quality of the miniatures over time. But this is a special game. This is like one of those games. Flying Frog Productions has basically put their entire company behind this line of products. And when I say line of products, I am talking like 45 expansions worth of content. So you're going to see individual packs of monsters that will give you not only the miniatures for those monsters to add into the game, but then, of course, they also come with the cards that then get layered into the core game experience you already have in order to increase the variability of the game. So in other words, more different types of monsters from different tiers of leveling, whether it's like a high threat, medium threat, low threat. It's obscene. This game, the scope of this game is ridiculous. If you're looking for a game that encompasses all themes in one game, this is it. There is no other game like it. How does it do this? Great question. You basically start in the Old West mines as a posse. You go into the mines. The premise behind it is kind of got that H.P. Lovecraft vibe where you've got monsters coming out of the mines to destroy the worlds, but the posse's going into the mines to take down the monsters and kind of push them back, seal them off, blow up that area, whatever. All these individual scenarios you can play as one-shots, but also if you're a really big fan of campaign style of play, I highly recommend you check out the file section, not of the revised edition, but of the original edition here. And actually there's multiple core boxes, which I won't get into here, but you can easily find them on Board Game Geek. This is just one of them. You go to the file section, you'll find something called Hexcrawl. This is a masterpiece of an unofficial variant to a game. This turns the game from being just one-shot situation to a campaign structure, which is just off the walls, insanely fun. I think my favorite of all these is the Mind Blast. I think it's Mind Blast or Mind Buster or something like that, where you essentially have an overarching map. You have to use, you have hexes all over the map. You have to traverse the land. You have to, keep your party together. You have random encounters you can run into. You have to traverse through time over the map, and eventually you get to a mine and you try and then you kind of go into that standalone situation where you go into a mine, try and take it down. If you're able to destroy everything inside of the mine and seal it with dynamite, then good, you've kind of completed one of the mines that you need to seal up, and you have to seal up a number of them. If you fail the mission, then what ends up happening is the mine becomes overrun, and it overruns and also impacts the next nearest town on the overarching map. And towns are places you can go visit and actually have full-blown interactions with. You can go to the saloon, you can buy things, you can gamble. Like, it's got RPG elements all built into it, but it's all sitting right there in front of you. It's not just on charts only. It's literally on the tabletop. They have I think it's called a New Town expansion as well that flushes all that stuff out, and the Hexcrawl uses it too. It's nuts. Like, it is a well of insanity, and it's so much fun. I have absolutely everything for this thing. One of the coolest things about it too is when you head inside the mine. So say, for instance, your main mission is to go in there and just blast dynamite at the very end of it once you've taken out the big bad and seal it up. Great. But also you're going to run into situations where you're going into the mine and you're going to run into what's known as a portal. And these portals are going to take you through one location to another. In other words, you're going to shift themes completely. You're going to go into a portal from a mine, and you're going to end up in kind of a ancient China look and feel, or you're going to go through a portal and end up in kind of a winter terrain situation, or maybe you'll end up in space, inside of a spaceship in space, or maybe you end up in a World War II setting. Like, it's that kind of crazy. So not only are you going to be finding cool items to gather and put on your posse and equip and use, and weapons from the Old West, you're going to go to these other lands and find technology and items that are just crazy for those time periods, get them, bring them back with you to the Old West, and then go through a portal to a spaceship and still have those weapons to use against different types of enemies. Like, the crossplay between what they've built here is bananas. There's no other way to say it. It's insane, and I love it. It's crazy. And the other reason I really like it too is because it gives you the actual sense in a dungeon crawler of really truly not knowing what's coming around the next corner. And that's something that I love. Like, you go down through these mines, there's different areas you can explore. So you'll come into a tile and there might be 4 different doors, but you don't know which one's going to lead to where. You might go down the right door, you flip a card, it will tell you which tile to place there. That tile might lead you further into the mines. Maybe the next one that comes up will be a portal. Maybe the next one that comes up with is a massive boss. And all of a sudden you go from going, I've actually had situations where I've had a party go into a mine, and within like 2 tiles, I've had the main boss show up and just devastate us right from the, and it's those kind of cool encounters you'll never forget when you play this game. I think that's why I'm so passionate about enjoying it. The biggest con to Shadows of Brimstone, I think the 2 biggest cons, one is it's expensive because it's miniatures based and there's a ton of expansions. So that's the first thing. Second thing is tons of dice rolling. So if you're not into dice rolling, you're not going to like this one at all. But I like dice, so I have no problem with this whatsoever. You'll be rolling to make checks against, as you do attacks. You'll be rolling on charts because, of course, it's got that RPG kind of feel to it. So dice are a huge part of the equation, but you have to be okay with that. Number 8 on my list is Sleeping Gods from Red Raven Games. This one came out in 2021. There's a bunch of expansions for it already. It is best played as a solo game, in my opinion, 100%. And this one is a little bit on the heavier side, kind of with Shadows of Brimstone in terms of complexity. I think it was 4. This one's 3.23. So I kind of enjoy some of those ones, and also very highly thematic too. So, these games that I kind of want to get lost into typically fall into the high theme bucket in most cases. They might not always rate high on Board Game Geek, but this is one that, you're inside of a ship and you're traversing different lands. You've got this book. The thing that I really like about it is that it's got a coil book that you're moving between different points. You're flipping this book as you explore. The presentation of this thing is extremely cool. It has visuals for everything, and you're maintaining your crew the entire time. You're obviously dealing with food and everything else. But you can get lost in this one. You can spend a lot of time. This one says anywhere from 60 to 1,200 minutes. So this is one that I would love to spend even more time exploring than I already have. But just to show you some more pictures of this thing on the table, it's a beautiful site. If you know anything about Red Raven Games, Ryan Lockett, him and his wife put a ton of effort into his games, and they not only, they do everything. They do the game design, they do the artwork, they're heavily involved in the testing, as well as a number of other people that they have on board for that. Illustrations. He does all his own artwork too. So it's like a one family show essentially with them. And it's pretty insane, to say the least, how much they kind of take on and pull off. And this being as big of a campaign game as it is, really came about through a number of different games that he put together over the years that all kind of culminated to this essentially. And that's what's really cool, is that like he had a number of games which I was kind of like on the fence about. I was like, I like it, but I don't like it enough. And then eventually Sleeping Gods came out and I was like, this one's cool. And so this is one I definitely recommend if you want to fall down the well in it. And for me personally, I want to keep playing this thing. The next solo game I wish I could play more often is Chronicles of Drunagor Age of Darkness, coming from Creative Games Studios. This was one that came out in 2021. Production quality off the charts. Rated extremely well, and I definitely recommend it for solo play. I could easily spend more and more hours inside of this one. There's also more content coming for this game in the future, which I'm really excited about, and I want to show you some of the images for this one because the production of this thing was insane. As their first entry into the fold in terms of a large-scale game, this was pretty nuts. Game trays have storage for absolutely everything. It all fits nice and beautiful, looks great. And the other thing I wanted to show you is just this table presence, because not only is game trays in there for the storage side of the equation, which most of us are familiar with, but also it was in there for the fact that you've got all these different levels within a dungeon. So it takes the typical dungeon crawler or adventure game from a flat perspective on the game table, gives it some tiers, and now you've got an upper level, medium level, and kind of your table level, all with verifying, or I should say, a variety of modifiers that can affect different attacks and affect different gameplay elements as you go along, which is really cool. And then on top of all that, you also have the darkness, which is going to be basically coming at you from behind or from in front of you, dependent on monsters that are there. And it's going to interact with you by negatively affecting your attacks based on whether you're near it, on it, and all that kind of stuff. And it just kind of keeps the pace of the game going. This one has a really interesting campaign. I'm really sucked in by this one. I like it a lot. I like the usage of these door. I really want to try to find a picture of it if I can, because the idea behind this was really, really cool. I'll try and jump ahead a little bit and see if I can find a photo where somebody has the doors stick the door. There we go. There's a door card right there. It's very small to see, but in this tile layout of the dungeon, as you can see here, right there, you've got this folded card sitting in the slot where the door is. So once you reach that door, you take that out and you open it up. There's even a QR code on it as well. You can scan to use the app, but you open this thing up and it's going to tell you how to structure things going forward. So again, you get that surprise element without actually knowing what's behind that door. On top of it, you also have a campaign booklet that it's going to reference as you go through your campaign. You might see a statue and you're going to reference the booklet, open it up to a certain page. It'll show you the statue really up close and give you multiple options on it in order to interact with it. Like what they did was they essentially took the typical dungeon crawler campaign game at a bird's eye level of a dungeon and brought it right down to feeling like you're in it, you're traversing it, you're seeing it, you're kind of interacting with it at that level. And I feel like that was a more interesting approach than most do. So I'm really excited to see kind of how they flush this thing out even further. And I would absolutely be happy to continue spending lots of time with this one. The next solo game I wish I could play more often, in the 6th position, is the 7th Continent. I mean, this thing is special. I mean, I feel like it's going to go down as one of those games that's just like insane for the combination of cards that intertwine with each other and the puzzly nature of trying to survive through this thing and also decipher what you're seeing as you move through the game. I mean, if you want an adventure game that is going to suck some time away and you can get lost in, this is it. And I would absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, have this thing on the table if my tables weren't full of games for filming. Have this set up all the time, consistently pushing through all the different curses this game actually has. I mean, its table presence is amazing, and the fact that it kind of, molds to how you're interacting with the world and your choices and your success rates, like it's just a very cool implementation of a game, and I'm really also excited for its future implementation, which is a 7 Citadel, which is also going to be really exciting as well. But the 7th Continent is the one for right now that I want to talk about, and there's a bunch of expansions for this one as well. So this is another one that you're going to be able to find out in the wild. It is released today. It kind of sits a bit more mid-weight. This actually might be the lowest weight of all of them so far, but you'll see overall rated probably one of the higher of the list, and thematically way up there. You're going to feel as if you're traversing through kind of this, you're basically a character who's landed on this area. You don't know why you're there. You don't know what's going on. You have a little snippet of information. You actually know a little bit, but not tons. And you're trying to piece together the clues that are going on in that area to try to rid yourself of a curse. It's very interesting, and you can get lost in it quite easily. And there's lots of content, even for the original, the original 2 campaigns, I believe, that were specific to the 7th Continent. There's a lot of different individual expansions you can pick up for this one. If you want to bolster your experience and kind of add them into the fray, you can have ones that basically will impact the weather. You've got 7th Continent, What Goes Up Must Come Down, which is another full box worth of content. Like there's a lot here. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous. So this is one I always recommend, because I feel like if you're looking for an adventure game, I mean, when this thing hit, there was nothing like it. And that was in 2017. I still think to date, there's nothing like this game when it's sprawled on the table that matches its complexity and craziness in terms of how much time you can spend trying to solve, trying to survive what Seventh Continent throws at you. We've reached top 5 territory of the solo games I wish I could play more often. Number 5 belongs to Aetherfields from 2020. And as I mentioned in a recent top 10 video, which was specific to Awakened Realms, I actually voiced how much I really like Aetherfields. And I still love this game, and I still want to play this more often than I do. This thing is extremely cool. This dream world is so unique to anything else out there in terms of its feel, its vibe, its unknown factor of what's going to get thrown at you at any given moment. And it's absolutely beautiful. The whole production is like mind-blowingly beautiful on the table. I talked about this in the previous video. I'm going to continue to shout from the rooftops about this one. The second edition rule set and kind of the spruced up rules came out. So that's awesome, which kind of bolsters this game to another level, I think, beyond what people thought of it from the original release. And I think it really helped to kind of bridge the gap, because there was certainly a barrier there in terms of this one being so abstract that I think a lot of people were kind of taken aback by it. But I think I remember actually covering this on the channel in terms of the prototype, and I loved it. Like, I loved this. I remember this scene specifically with this prototype. This is all prototype stuff. It looks so much better in the final production, but I remember going through this and just thinking how cool it was that, like, you had cards that you would get that would actually sit and layer themselves on top of other cards, and it would change the quadrants of the cards and impact what's going on in the world. It was so interesting. And it still is. So this is one of those ones that, again, the channel was not a factor. I had lots more time. I would be lost in Aetherfields. Number 4 for solo games I wish I could play more often is Madara Unintentional Malum Act 1. And technically this game has 3 acts, and they're all in the pipes. And that's a ton of content. For those of you that know Madara, it is a beast of a game. This thing, I mean, campaign-wise, in terms of what this thing does, and in terms of how much I would love to continue to kind of just explore this monstrosity of a game, which is just continuing to get larger and larger. It's insane. It covers every aspect so well. There's not much you can really gripe about with this one. I mean, it's a little bit of a table hog. I think that's probably the only downside to this one. But again, if you're getting lost in a game and you have a lot of extra time and you really want to just dig into a game that's going to be rewarding, this is it. I mean, the app that it has and the background narrative that it has, the voice narration that it has, is like second to none. Like, it's up in the top 5, top 3 conversation on anybody's list all the time. Even if they don't like the theme, this is going to be way up there, because they built a world, and you can actually go to their site to see how much of the world they flushed out just there on their site in terms of explanation, and then actually experience the game and see how much more there is. It's insane. I think I've said it like 1,000 times. It is insane. And this is one that I would love to spend more and more time with. Again, when Act 2 and 3 show up, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get to Act 2 and 3 based on the fact that I have, a channel. But again, this list is all about talking about games that I would dig into. The moment I had a break, I would put this thing back on the table and continue to churn away on it. And Madara definitely deserves a spot on this list. And I'm sure a number of solo gamers out there are probably clapping at this recommendation, because this one is absolutely one that deserves praise. We've made it to the 3rd slot of solo games I wish I could play more often. It belongs to Frosthaven from Cephalofair Games. Really, really love Gloomhaven. I mean, I'm a huge fan of it. I love the ability to go through your deck and have to pick and decide and strategize and worry about initiative and try to min-max all of your decisions. Like, the gameplay of Gloomhaven is an art form in terms of how it uses its cards, and there's no dice. It's really well done. And Frosthaven basically took what Gloomhaven did, blows it up even further, and then adds so much meat into the in-between game that was kind of between the scenarios. It really flushes that out to the nth degree. Now, Frosthaven's one I would love to spend more time in than I can currently. But one thing that I can say on the Gloomhaven side of the equation is that I'm able to enjoy the game more easily because of the fact it went digital. So I played it a ton on the channel. I think I put about 125 videos up for Gloomhaven, And then, of course, also played a ton on the tabletop as well. But then eventually transitioned to the digital medium the second that they released that. And they even added Jaws of the Lion into that equation. And I'm currently playing through that right now. So my intent is to get through Jaws of the Lion and Gloomhaven from start to finish completed in terms of the digital, because for me personally running a channel, it's really hard to actually play Gloomhaven from start to finish on the table, but I can absolutely pull it off in a digital format. So that's what I'm aiming to do. And I'm hoping in the future, and I'm guessing will happen, is that they will go ahead and they'll push Frosthaven here, which is another massive undertaking, another massive game for those of you that are familiar with Gloomhaven, and they'll put it into a digital medium. And for me, that works better than the tabletop. Now, again, if I didn't have the channel, I would choose the board game over the digital implementation, because I'd actually just set it up and enjoy the experience, because I like actually feeling the components and moving things around, interacting with it. But because of the time constraint that I have with the channel and stuff like that, and focusing in other areas, I really appreciate the digital implementation for these things. So I'm really hoping that the Frosthaven one comes along in the future, so I can continue to enjoy this one beyond what I pecked away at the beginning portions of this campaign. In the second position of solo games I wish I could play more often, Kingdom Death Monster from Adam Poots and Kingdom Death. This one actually does have a digital implementation as well, although it's only for the core game currently, and I do appreciate that quite a bit, because again, as a content creator, that allows me to play the game more often without having to set up the gigantic behemoth that this game is. For those of you that know Kingdom Death Monster, it is a massive game. There is a lot of content. There's sprues, there's miniatures to create, all that kind of stuff. Again, if I had more time on my hands, I'd love to dig into this even further than I already have. One thing to mention, lots of expansions that are currently available. I have all of the ones that are currently out there. There's also, from the most recent campaign, a number of expansions delivering in the future. The Gambler's Chest we just found out recently in an update that had landed, I think, May 2nd, and that was very recently, that the Gambler's Chest, I guess their first pre-production copy has shown up, and they took some pictures of it, and it appears it is literally the same size as the core box. This is just the Gambler's Chest from that campaign. That is literally terrifying, because once again, just an obscene amount of content. There's a lot of people that have been waiting a long time for this, and I think there's a lot of angst around it, and some people are a little bit maybe mad that it has taken as long as it has. But when you start to see how much you're getting for how much you paid, I think people are going to realize that they have got their money's worth. So it's really cool to see that this is actually making strides. And I think the Campaigns of Death, I believe, is going to be another really cool one, where it ties in all the expansions that came from the original Kingdom Death run, I want to say from Wave 1, let's say. In terms of expansions, there were 12 expansions after the core game, and that Campaigns of Death book that's going to come, it's going to tie all that together and integrate it all together in a nice way and add to it as well. So there's lots of things to look forward to with this one, and I 100%, if given the opportunity, would dig even further into this world. Definitely recommend you check it out, but know that it does have the assembling of miniatures as a con, and it is expensive. And we've now made it to the top of the list, and in the number one position of solo games that I wish I could play more often, it belongs to Aeon Trespass Odyssey from Into the Unknown, an extremely successful first campaign for this one. I mean, this game came out and has gotten such high praise. It's insane. If you take a look on Board Game Geek, 9.3, like anything 9.0 and above is mind-blowing. It's a game you have to check out, you have to try, you have to at least look into it, bare minimum. The fact it's that high up there for a game of its scale is scary good, terrifyingly good even. The weight of the game is 4.73 to 5, so it is definitely on the heavier side of the equation. We'll take a look at some of the images here. You're going to see some similarities in terms of its look and feel from Kingdom Death Monster, mainly just in how it was probably advertised in the original campaign. But I can tell you from a gameplay perspective, it's more filled in. It's got all the aspects of a campaign that you'd want to have there. And the fact that it kind of ties into adventures inside dangerous, mysterious lands in ancient Greece and beyond, like it just has a really unique theme, very cool vibe to it. And it's a board, it's got miniatures, but the board game was built alongside of it at the same time. Whereas I think the approach with Kingdom Death Monster, my understanding was the miniatures were there and that's what the focus was originally. And then they kind of built a board game around the designing of miniatures, right? And they did a really good job of doing that with that core game when it first came out. But I think the approach with Aeon Trespass Odyssey seems to have been a lot more in parallel. It was, not only they're going to create nice miniatures, they're going to create a great game at the same time. And so when you pair those two things together and you do it really well, it can be a very, very special equation. And that's exactly what happened here. This one comes in a really large coffin-sized white box, and on the table, it definitely has table presence. It definitely looks really nice. Another benefit to the Trespass game versus Kingdom Death Monster, if you're considering either or both, is that it comes assembled. The miniatures come assembled, so you don't have to deal with the sprues. You don't have to deal with gluing miniatures together and building them, which can be a pro or a con depending on what side you're on and whether you're a painter or not, all that kind of stuff. In terms of which one's got better quality for miniatures, I'm going to let other people decide that. I would say I'd probably give the nod a little bit more to Kingdom Death Monster, but Odyssey is like right there. Like I'm blown away by both. I have no issues with either. And actually, some of the miniatures I picked up from Odyssey, I was pretty certain that I actually thought there was more detail and it was more impressive on their side. So it really kind of was like dependent on which piece you're looking at. Overall, this is one you need to look into. And again, if you missed out on that original campaign, there is another reprint coming for mid-May, so you don't have to wait long. You're able to kind of start digging in right now to research whether or not this is going to be for you. I would recommend you look into this, being that it was rated so high. I think this second reprint is going to be an extremely successful campaign. So definitely check it out. And again, you may end up deciding that it's not for you. That's fine. But in a situation where a game is 9.0 and above, it's certainly worth looking into, especially when the campaign's just around the corner. So for me personally, if I had to take these top 10 games from this list of solo games I wish I could play more often, I had to choose just one of them to dig into, it would be this one. I would take all the others and push them aside, and I'd put this on the game table and continue to play it, because my experience with this one has been that this is fantastic for a solo gamer. And that's going to wrap up the list of top 10 solo games I wish I could play more often. This was a lot of fun to put together. I mean, it didn't take me long. I really just had to sit down and think, if I had absolutely all the time in the world to play games, which ones would I sink my time into? And as soon as I started writing 5 out, I had another 5 almost instantly, and I had myself a list of 10. This was a fun list to go through, and it really didn't take long to decide which one should go in which positions, because I knew exactly which games I would gravitate towards in order based on my current mindset. Now, again, if you came back and talked to me in a couple months, things might change positions potentially based on my experiences with some of these games as I dig into them even more. So this list could change over time potentially, and it might be fun to revisit this in the future and say, hey, like out of those 10, in 5 years from now or something like this, are they still there? Are you still willing to dig into this game? Or are you kind of sitting there going, no, I kind of got my fill and I'm over it. So very fun overall. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn this all back to you guys, because in the comments below, you don't have to come up with 10. Although if you have 10, that's awesome. Do it. But if you have a list of 5 that you would take off your shelf and you would dig into, if someone said time is no issue, you have time to dig into whatever game you want, what games would those be? Let me know in the comments below what your top 5 or top 10 would be. I would love to hear it. Not only myself, but the community would love to hear it, because this will also bring a whole bunch of other games to light. That's going to be it. Thank you guys for watching, listening to me ramble. Had a lot of fun with this one. Can't wait to do another one. And if you have any ideas for other top 10 lists you'd like to see me do, shoot them down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much. And as always, keep on rolling solo.